Plant-based eating is not the same as vegetarian or vegan. Hey everybody, I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. And this is an important distinction for us to make, and people say, well, why does it matter? Because there are certain stigmas and social things around vegetarianism and veganism, whereas in plant-based eating is purely about diet, purely about health, has nothing to do with moral implications or strict guidelines. So people need to understand that. And keeping in mind, plant-based diets are pretty much largely and almost universally supported. By universally, we're going to say at least 95%, if not close to 100%, a few outliers of registered dietitians, cardiologists, cancer specialists. These people generally recommend this because the data in support of this type of eating is very, very strong. And yes, there is a backlash among a tiny little crazy fringe in the fitness world and to the opposite. But people do need to keep in mind that is a small fringe, and even the health professionals who endorse that sort of thing are a tiny minority, nowhere near 1%. And almost none of them actually specialize in those areas. So that's been pointed out. Like I've seen cardiologists point that out. They're like, none of these MDs and the whole anti-plant, anti-fiber movement actually work with cancer patients or a cardiologist or anything like that. He's like, this is not even their area of expertise. So again, you're going to find that the people who work with these diseases directly, they know that their patients improve much more rapidly in these environments. So when we say plant-based eating, that means that if you guys go to even Google and check it, even the AI will tell you, the general consensus loose idea is if at least 2/3 of your calories come from plants, okay, that would be plant-based. Now, people say, well, that's not high. That would allow, definitely some animal products. Yeah, but it won't allow for high-fat animal products, meaning it's really hard to work a ribeye steak or a bunch of bacon in there, okay? But, for most people working in some leaner protein sources, yeah, you can easily stay under that number. And in the case of someone like me, these days I probably eat about 80% plant-based, about 20% animal products. And all of my animal products are lean proteins, right? So what's the whole idea with plant-based, especially if we're talking about a whole foods plant-based approach, which is generally recommended, keeping in mind vegetarians, vegans, all those can still eat a lot of junk food normally, okay? Because those diets are not, hey, let's figure out what's the healthiest. It's usually, hey, I don't want to eat animals because I'm morally against it. And, that's their purview. That's not my place to tell those people, what they should or shouldn't do. Those are personal ethical choices, right? Personal ethical choices. Vegans take it a way step further. They don't want anything that came from an animal at all, up to and including honey, because they ethically oppose the idea of any sort of enslavement or utilization, of animals directly. So that's their purview. But we need to understand that those are ethical ideologies, sometimes religious in nature. Some forms of vegetarianism are religious in nature. And keep in mind there are things like pescatarians too, which are vegetarians who still eat fish. Okay? But the idea with plant-based is not that you're excluding any of these foods entirely. It's not saying you're saying, oh, you go to an event, someone says, oh man, you can't have this, can you? Because it's got a drop of whatever in it, right? No, you just go, no, I generally avoid those foods and keep my animal fat low and don't go crazy on animal products for health purposes, right? But by that same token, if you had a meal once a week that was kind of off plan for that, you would think of it just like you would a cheat day, right? Just like bodybuilders and everyone else often have cheat days where they eat foods that are off their program, right? They'll eat some junk or whatever. You would treat it the same way. It's the same concept, right? The same concept. Plant-based eating, especially whole foods plant-based, you're focused on eating whole foods, grains and fruits and vegetables and tubers and nuts and whatever, right? In my case, it's a lot of brown rice and potatoes and vegetables and fruit, right? Some beans and stuff. It's mostly how I eat, but then I work animal proteins in. But again, they're leaner, right? So that's the idea here. So we're not talking about the whole concept of I'm excluding these things because I'm morally opposed to it. Now, these things can go together. They're absolutely vegans who are obviously whole foods, plant-based, because plant-based means most of your calories in your diet comes from plants. Whole foods means mostly minimally processed foods, right? Wholer foods. But keep in mind, in those other ideas, there are junk food vegetarians and junk food vegans. What do I mean? Once you sit around eating refined sugar, or eat chips fried in coconut oil and tropical oils and all this sort of stuff, junk food, right? The same stuff that's gonna kill you, right? The same garbage junk food that kills people who eat meat. It's just they're not getting all the extra saturated fat. But here's the concept behind a lot of it. The idea is that we know what foods are bad for us, and then we know what foods eating more of improve our health. And the data on this is very strong around the world. You don't need any conspiracies or this industry. No, it's all over the world. It's all over the world. We know that saturated fat in significant amounts is harmful. Like this isn't really subject to debate anymore. There are certain types that are more benign than others, like minimally processed dairy saturated fat seems to be far less of a problem, but butter seems to be horrible if you look at the data directly. But, whole milk and even some cheeses and whole fat yogurts, yeah, they're nowhere near as bad as some of the other saturated fats. Whereas some of the tropical oils are just as bad. Coconut oil, probably not palm oil. Yeah, these are not healthy. They're still kind of bad saturated fat. So then we come back over to all the red meat, animal fats, right? They're generally not good for us. They're generally bad for us. And in excess, they're catastrophic to our health, right? So are refined sugars, though. So we come back over to that point of the whole idea with a whole foods plant-based diet is not about, hey, I'm avoiding animal stuff. It's like I'm going to eat in a pattern that's good for my health. So we want fiber. We want whole foods. Again, grains, legumes, fruits, vegetables, things like that. Keeping animal fats very, very low, which it means in general because most people aren't eating 600 grams of animal protein a day, right? If they're not doing that, then you're not going to see an enormous chunk of your calories coming from that unless you're really forcing down animal protein. So by simply going that other route, it's going to push it in that direction, and that's the idea. So whole foods plant-based eating is limiting refined foods, refined sugars, limiting animal source fats, right? And keeping the majority of your calories coming from plants that are whole food in nature. That's all that it means. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.